say no.
Okay. Welcome back to the From the Fabricator podcast. I'm your host, Max Perlstein, and we are back for another fun-filled edition with three incredible guests. Thank you so much for joining. As always, this podcast is brought to you by My Glass Class and myglassclass.com. Check that out at the aforementioned myglassclass.com. 120 courses. 60 of them or more in Spanish. This was developed by the National Glass Association by professionals in the industry. And so you know it is the best, a good vetted training apparatus, myglassclass.com. Get on that right away and check it out. Any questions, let me know. Before we get into the podcast, BEC was a huge success. Thank you to everyone who attended, everybody who took part. Thrilled with it. Can't now wait till BEC and GPAD next year in Nashville. But before that, we've got Glass Conference Tacoma coming up, the NGA Glass Conference coming up in Tacoma this summer. And then, of course, the granddaddy of them all, the biggie, Glass Build America this fall in Atlanta. Look forward to seeing everybody there. You'll kind of hear a little bit about both of those things, especially Glass Build, in the coming months. All right, so enough of me. I've got three great guests this month: Susan Stone, Trent Thiry, and Brandon Nicastro. Three interesting people who have all taken some interesting paths to our industry, doing really good things and really, impressive individuals. So let's get things started. We'll kick it off with Susan right here. All right, a gigantic thrill for me to continue on this podcast. I've got Susan Stone, the CEO of Ubiquitous Energy. You can find them online at ubiquitous.energy. Great website. Check them out. And Susan was supposed to be one of our keynote speakers at BEC a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a storm of the century that came in and stopped her. So you get her on this podcast. So first off, Susan, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome. I've been looking forward to it.
I'm thrilled to have you. And so there were a lot of people that were at BEC that were excited to hear from you in person, because so many people have seen you either in different media appearances or podcasts or TechCrunch or, South by Southwest or where, you're out there. I mean, so this is awesome that I'm getting to talk to you, because I'm like, this is big for me. So what happened? Is everything okay? It was like a big time storm that snowed you in and did not allow you to get to Vegas.
That's right. Climate change happened, Max. That's what happened. We've been having, gosh, if anybody reads the news, you can't miss this. But, on the West Coast, we've just been having this epic, not necessarily in a good way, but epic winter. I'm up in the mountains. So for me, it's all been snow. We've gotten, I think, 50 feet of snow since December. And in the Bay Area and Los Angeles, the whole West Coast, coastal areas, it's been tons and tons of rain. So It's been a little disruptive.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're okay. And it was funny because when, there was a question on whether you're going to make it, I said, this is not even a question. Tell her to stay there, be safe. Do not try to brave the elements to get to Vegas to BEC. So I'm glad everything's all right. And I'm glad we could do this and catch up this way.
Me too. Yeah. And I appreciated that you were so kind to me, and that hopefully the folks that were seeing me got to see Kelly, who filled in for me. And I heard a rumor that she did a terrific job.
Kelly did a terrific job, and Kelly had a couple lines that then were threaded through the rest of the conference. So you've done a good job as a keynote speaker when people are parroting your lines for the next 2 days. So Kelly did a great job.
I love it, and I'm not surprised that she did a great job.
She did a super job. So let's talk about you. You have this unbelievable personality, and you've come into our industry, the glass and glazing industry, really on a great high, because it's such an important need that you guys are bringing to the table. But let's talk about you. Where did you come from? Where'd you grow up? And how did you get to this point of joining all of us crazy folks in the glass world?
Well, it's going to be a very long story, Max, but I'll try to keep it short. I grew up on the East Coast in the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay.
So kind of a funny little connection to Kelly, who we were just talking about, who's based in the D.C. area. And I just loved living there, because I grew up as one of those kids who thought museums were free. That was a thing that we did all the time when I was growing up, right? You go to the Smithsonian, you go to the Natural History Museum, and it's all free. And so I remember being so shocked when I went to New York for the first time, and I was like, wait, what? You pay for museums everywhere else? This blew my mind.
Right.
So I was very lucky to grow up in our nation's capital. And from there, I went to Yale for my undergrad, where I studied economics, and then back to DC to Georgetown, where I got an MBA in finance. So you'll kind of see my theme for a long time has been finance.
Sure. Okay. And you know, obviously it's a great skill set to have. Now, how did you end up in the clean tech world? You know, because that's a big jump.
It is a big jump, and mostly by accident. I mean, I've always been a person that loves being outside and doing things outside. That's, you know, if you are looking for me on any weekend day outside the house, unless it's storming, is typically a place to find me. And so, you know, I've just always kind of had this underlying desire to take care of our environment. But I'll tell you, until I started investing in climate tech. So I'll back up and tell you, I was an investment banker, which if anybody's considering investment banking, downsides, 100-hour weeks, upsides, you learn so much. I mean, it's like you compress 10 years into 2. So I learned a ton. And then I switched over to being an investor. And so that's where I started investing in climate tech. Okay. So call it like 2013, 2014 timeframe. So, you know, about 10 years ago. And that is where I think I was just starting to internalize the urgency that I think so many people are feeling now. And it was a lonely time to feel that urgency of climate tech back 10 years ago. Oh yeah. There weren't that many of us. There wasn't a lot of capital for companies like Ubiquitous. I mean, I invested in Ubiquitous in 2013. And so one of the things that we did when I was an investor working in that space was try to support companies like Ubiquitous that maybe couldn't find capital otherwise, because we tend to have long time frames. Frequently, we're making stuff. You know, these aren't just software companies that VCs can see an easy hockey stick, you know, straight up and right. Yeah. They take time, they take capital, they take, you know, kind of like the stick-to-itiveness to make a physical product. So I'm really proud that we invested early stage in companies like Ubiquitous. And then I just kept on as an investor until about 3.5 years ago, when it was so clear at Ubiquitous that we had progressed the company and the technology to a place where it was mature and ready to be productized and commercialized. And our founder, Miles, who's now our CTO, was our CEO at the moment. And it was just time for somebody else to come in and work alongside him to build up what I think of as like the build business and commercial side of business. Perfect. So I told you it was going to be a long story.
No, all good. And no, it makes sense. And now it kind of all comes together, because I didn't know, you know, from, you know, how you got from point A to point B. So now I do. And so that's helpful. And so I'm with Susan Stone, CEO of Ubiquitous Energy. Find them online at ubiquitous.energy is the website. And so now let's talk about Ubiquitous Energy, and a lot of buzz a couple of weeks ago at BEC about it, a lot of buzz in the marketplace about it because of, you know, different deals you've made, but there's people probably watching that have no idea what we're talking about. So can we give like a basic primer of what you and Ubiquitous Energy does?
Yes, absolutely. For this audience, the simplest way to think of us is that we make a transparent coating that goes on window glass that makes energy. We make a solar coating that we embed in window glass into a standard low-E coating and turn that window, that IGU, into a solar panel. If you back up one step further, our core technology and really the invention that came out of MIT is this concept of making transparent solar. And so the way we do that is we don't harvest the visible light. It sounds so simple, right? If you just don't harvest visible light, you can see through the materials. And so the reason I bring that up is because our first products are for windows, because it's just so obvious, right? Like you want to be able to see through your window. Sure. There's such an important part of the building envelope or the home, the skin of the single family home, that solar belongs there. But when you start to imagine invisible solar, it gets really fun to start thinking about where else could you put it. And we have quite a roadmap for the places that we can put it in the future.
And so to be clear with it, no pun intended, obviously, the you know, most people are thinking solar panel, they're thinking the black, gray, roof sort of scenario, or some that may have been in the industry back in the 2008, 2009, 2010. There was that different organic solar that was out there that was red or green, and had different colors. This is clear. This is transparent.
Sure. Yeah, this is clear. And I know this is an audio podcast, but if anyone can see me, I've got windows behind me. These are producing energy. I mean, this is a photo, but this is at Michigan State, one of our installations. And I think, look, that is not easy to do, Max. I think, well, not only is it a little bit challenging to make invisible, transparent solar materials, but the process of engineering them so that they not only look like a low E coating, but they also perform like a low E coating and offer the same thermal benefits. That was a lot of engineering work. That didn't just happen by accident. And that was one of the things I'm really proud of that our team has been able to do, because in my opinion, no one's going to install glass that doesn't look like traditional glass. I mean,
Correct.
We love the way glass looks. That's the reason we build with it. You can see through it, and because it looks gorgeous. And we can't ask our customers or our builders or architects to compromise that. That kind of misses the point.
And especially now with natural light is so crucial. The studies have shown about what it does for your health and welfare. You have to have it. You have to have natural light. And I think that's where you're right on top of it with this. Very nice.
I don't see humans starting to live back in caves with no windows anymore. No way. Pandora's box is open. We realized we can build with glass and see. I have a window next to me. Can you tell? We can see out the window. And the more glass, the more modern your building looks. I mean, that's just how we're wired.
Yeah. And it's funny when I started to work from home, I started to work from home long before the pandemic. It was in 2002. I started to work from home, and my first office in my home was in my basement. And I thought it was the best place to do it. It was going to be quiet. Nobody was going to bother me. I'd be in the basement. It was horrendous. Staring at those walls, it was just so bad. And there was no natural light coming in. It was cold. It was dank. And so it is just so funny. So I knew way back when that there was a need for natural light. So you guys have the angle here. You also mentioned your people, which are some of your people are absolutely fantastic. Many of them, everybody I've met's been fantastic. But the big question is, why now is the timing right? I mentioned earlier it was tried a few years ago. I don't think the product was right, obviously. But why now? Why is now a great time for the transparent PV push that you guys are really leading the charge on?
Yeah. Well, I think no surprise, it's a combination of, kind of the perfect storm of things happening at once. One of them, and probably the most important for us, is we're ready. I mean, that kind of sounds so obvious, right? But from the moment of invention, and I really mean invention, like our co-founders sitting around the lab at MIT talking about this and, kind of, I wonder if we could, going from that to product in about 11 years is pretty fast. And so we've gotten the technology to the point where it has what I like to think of as the trifecta. And I'm kind of stealing this from our friends at Anderson, because this is the way they describe the technology and they do it so beautifully. We have the aesthetics that are critical that we already talked about. Yep. We have the performance. And for me, that means both thermal efficiency and energy generation. So we can produce right now with our current production formula, we can produce about 50 watts per square meter of glass. And then the last piece, and this is the easy piece to gloss over if you're kind of behind us and still in the lab, is manufacturability.
Right.
And those three things were not easy to get all kind of nailed at once. We have them. And so that's part of the reason for us. I mean, we're ready. We're ready to go into manufacturing. We're ready to really release this product into the wild, which is so exciting. So us being ready was a huge part of it. I think the industry is much more ready than the industry has been in the past. And that was part of why I was so disappointed to miss BEC, because I wanted to be talking to glazers, because these are the guys that are so critical to getting the glass installed, but also to adoption.
Sure.
And so I see this, and I'm going to ask for your perspective here for a second to see if you agree, but I see this instead of no new products, don't want to take a risk on new stuff. I mean, that's underlying a little bit, but I see an excitement and a hunger to turn the building envelope into something that can work for us, instead of always being the kind of oh gosh, here we got to deal with the architect wants more glass, and how do we deal with the thermal efficiency, and it's not as good as a wall, etc. So curious if you're seeing the same thing. And then I have one more. I'm usually in three, so I have one more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree. I think there's a good, climate for that right now. I think everybody is hungry for it. It does answer a lot of the questions that these guys and gals are getting, and so the Glazers aren't anti-innovation. They want that. They want it. They want something that they can, be comfortable with and work, and they want companies that will stand behind it. So I think that, your feeling on this is exactly correct. And I'll tell you, it would have been nice to have you there. I know you couldn't make it and so on, but I will tell you what was fascinating to me was twice I had people that I was stopping to say hello to, and they had to say, no, I've got a meeting with Kelly, or I got a meeting with Dave from Ubiquitous, and ran off on me. And I'm like, really? Okay, so it happened to me twice, and so there was a buzz there. So you'd be very pleased with your folks were definitely working hard in your absence.
Oh, I have no doubt about, because they're as excited about the product as I am. And I mean, I think, look, Max, I think there is a very reasonable amount of risk aversion amongst glazers and really across the whole value chain in commercial real estate. And I think, from the outside, especially, we come from Silicon Valley, and when you look in from the outside, it's easy to just say, oh, these guys don't like risk. There's a very good reason that folks want tried and true products, things that have been tested, things that are proven to be reliable and durable. I mean, you put glass up in a building and it should be there for decades.
Yeah.
I find that all super, super reasonable. And so that's part of why what we've done, and again, this is in this really intentional engineering, we're doing everything we can to make the product as same and or similar as we possibly can to what's already being installed. Yeah. We can't get everything exactly the same, but as close as we can get, that's our mission.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm with Susan Stone, CEO of Ubiquitous Energy. I know you're busy. I got a few more questions, and so I'm going to mix things up a little bit. I got a fun question for you. I'm very, very curious on this one, just because we've been really working hard on promoting women in the glass and glazing industry, and it's really taken off, and I'm excited. I want it to keep growing, and so there's a lot of mentors and protege aspects going on. But for you, who are your role models? Who have you looked up to, and either in the past or still looking up to now, to kind of guide you in your day to day?
Gosh, I think, and luckily you previewed this question for me so that I'm not completely caught off guard.
Right.
But it was funny when I was thinking about this, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Like, even as a kid, I'm never like a super fan of any one individual. Like, when you grow up, like kids growing up would have like posters of whoever, right, like actors and stuff. That was never my thing. I don't know why. It's just kind of how my brain's wired. So for me, instead of having like a person that I aspire to be like, I tend to look at, kind of the people around me and people in public life. And there are certain aspects of, what that person does and the way they do it that I admire. And so, some of these are obvious. Like, who do you grow up admiring? I grew up admiring my mom and my grandmother. Yeah. They were women who did not follow the rules. Both my grandmothers actually did not follow the rules. My dad's mom was one of the first women to get a PhD from Columbia. Wow. When Columbia didn't really admit women, like she kind of snuck in because she went to Barnard and then, snuck in and then managed to get a PhD. And so you kind of get a sense for, I come by accident from just a group of women who just kind of didn't follow the rules. And so that, in a very nice and polite way, right? Because these women were of generations in which, you couldn't smash the walls down. You really kind of had to.
You had to work through it. You had to work with what you had. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and that aspect, Max, is a big part of it, is working with what you have. And, some of this is playing the game in order to succeed at it. And, yes, we try to break through barriers and we try to break rules when it makes sense. But really that just thinking differently and thinking creatively from the women in my family was an absolute really big, admirable trait for me. So that's one. I I always talk about my husband as somebody that I really admire, because he is, like, at his core, a person who doesn't believe in doing anything unless you do it really well. So like I don't think he's half-assed anything in his entire life.
I love it. I love it.
I don't really either.
I love it. One of my favorite lines is no half measures, no half measures. And so
Definitely no half measures.
I love it. I love it. Very cool. Very cool. I like it. Great answer. Great answer. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
I could go on, but you get a sense for it.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. I like that. And and again, I kind of almost expected that from you, to have a very well thought out and perfectly placed answer. A couple more questions. The big thing that's happened in our world was the Inflation Reduction Act. And to me, it's an interesting one. When I give talks, I do point it out. That this thing is a game changer. It could be huge. But my fear is that in past government assisted programs, and I'm thinking back to the stimulus and the whole shovel ready thing, people didn't take advantage of it. It just languished. What will make the Inflation Reduction Act a little different? Because that's huge for a company like Ubiquitous Energy.
Huge. Absolutely. And it's funny, when you asked me why now, my kind of third prong of why now is really a combination of incentives and attention now. I mean, right. The urgency, like, you cannot escape the urgency. And there's just so much more knowledge and momentum behind finding solutions for the climate crisis. So what does that mean for the Inflation Reduction Act and these incentives? I do think that these incentives will be much more taken advantage of than prior iterations.
Okay.
I think there have been some tweaks. I'm not usually one to compliment legislation, and in this case, it's been really nicely written. And there are some tweaks that, in my opinion, are really going to increase the kind of like the uptake of those incentives. Okay. One of them, which I absolutely love, is there's a direct pay option. So what does that mean? That means that folks who run nonprofits, so think some hospitals, educational institutions, they haven't typically been able to take advantage of these tax incentives, except with, maybe some really gnarly structuring that not everybody has appetite for.
Sure.
Now there's a direct pay aspect where they don't even have to be taxpayers, and they can still get the benefit of the incentive. So that's just one example, but there are many. And I think that there's so much more attention these days to upgrading your home, upgrading your building. There's just a lot more education out there and attention. So I think the incentives have a really good chance of working in this case and really driving adoption for all kinds of sustainable technologies.
Nice. Very nice. Now, so you mentioned earlier, things are rolling, you guys are really putting things together, but now the question is when is this coming? When am I going to see it in my specifications? When am I going to be able to order it? How do I order it? I mean, I know that was, what some of your folks were kind of dealing with it at BEC a couple of weeks ago. So what is a little bit of a timeline on when, and what are the next steps look like for Ubiquitous Energy?
Well, I wish we had a firm timeline. It's just part of the nature of being a startup is that we are at every corner, we're gated by, and to unlock the next phase. And so right now we are working on raising capital for our first manufacturing facility. You may have seen bank failures, et cetera, that, are impacting the way investors think about risky investments. Yes. So I don't have a firm timeline for when we'll have that, raised and ready to go. And I can also tell you that we're getting really strong support from the Department of Energy through the Loans Program Office. It's run by Jigar Shah. He and that team have just been incredibly instrumental in backing companies like ours, projects like ours. So more information to come soon, but DOE is helping us out. And so, I mean, realistically, once we break ground on our manufacturing facility, I'll be able to tell you a much firmer timeline for, when I can get full-size floor-to-ceiling glass in your hands. But it's still a couple of years. Factories take some time to build. They
do. And obviously the supply chain and the pandemic doesn't help that much either, because things run a little bit further behind. But it has allowed you, and I guess that, again, pointing back to BEC, it has allowed you to take more time for the R&D, because that was one of the discussions where I was sitting amongst glazers who had just met with your folks, and they were like, hey, okay, I like what they're doing with this, will that work for you? And so there was a lot of kind of sharing of thought process going along there. So that's allowed you to continue to kind of, really kind of polish up what you're offering and what your product's going to look like when all is said and done. So that's in a way a good thing. And, that there's time for you to continue to really get it right.
Absolutely. And that's something that, I mean, my frame of reference is Ubiquitous. So I imagine everyone does this, but that's something I'm really proud of with our team, is that there are no wasted moments on our team. And so you got it exactly right. I mean, what this allows us, and by the way, a couple of years to build a plant, we keep polishing while,
Sure.
we're building the factory. It allows us to design an end product that is as simple as humanly possible.
That's the key.
And,
Yep.
right, to go back to earlier in the conversation, making it easy for, to be spec'd in, make it easy to be engineering modeled, make it easy for our glazers to install. We are using that time to simplify, and to find out what's important. That was also why I was, disappointed to miss those conversations at BEC, because we need the industry to tell us where their pain points are and what's important to them. Otherwise, we're guessing.
Yeah, and that was the discussion I sat in on. I just kind of happened upon it, and it was fascinating to be a fly on the wall. So last question, I'm with Susan Stone, CEO of Ubiquitous Energy. Find them online at ubiquitous.energy. And then again, thank you so much for the time today. But I got to ask, how you are naturally, from what I could tell, a very upbeat, positive person. So you're probably always in that positive go forward mode. How excited are you though, and how do you contain that excitement? You got so much good coming up. You got to be pretty pumped about this whole entire process.
I am super pumped about this process. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard. Like, some days I feel like I'm like jumping out of my skin. I'm so excited about what we're able to do. I think we have an opportunity just with Ubiquitous to make such a big impact on carbon emissions, and to do it in a way that doesn't really ask people to do that much differently. And I see technology and solutions like that coming up every day that aren't asking folks. I mean, EVs are a great example. We're not asking you to change your mode of transportation altogether. You can still have your vehicle go wherever you want, whenever you want.
Right.
Let's just electrify it.
Right.
And so I'm seeing solutions like that come online all the time that get me excited, not just about what we're doing at Ubiquitous, but about being part of, I think about it like a solution revolution here for climate tech. And that is so fun to be a part of. And I'll give you a little bit of a compliment, Max. You were one of the first people in the glass and glazing and fenestration industry who was so welcoming to us when we were kind of new here. I still feel new here. And I've been overwhelmed by that. And I mean, you're one of many, just an incredibly friendly and collaborative industry. And I wasn't sure what to expect when I came in. So I've been really, really excited about that too.
That's awesome. No, it's been my pleasure, and the opportunity to visit with your folks wherever it comes. It's everybody. Again, the team from Ubiquitous could not be any classier. Everybody is such good eggs, and so you've done well. The culture there is fantastic, obviously. That's a good thing. It's good to have you guys with us, and I do think that the solution revolution, I think that that will stick, because that's we need to be a part of that as an industry. And that's one of the things that really drove me to Ubiquitous. Was I was among those people back in 2008, 2009 with some of the organic, photovoltaics. And I liked what the potential was, but it wasn't going to happen. It was too much of a change. Like you said, you've got to make it like what people are used to. That wasn't it. And it wasn't close to even being it. So I was excited from the first time I saw this, and just will continue to be. And then your people just make it all the much better. So kudos to you on that. And I'm pumped right with you. This is good stuff. I just want time to kind of keep moving so we can get there. I'm sure you do too.
That's right. That's how I feel too. Every day I'm like, let's go faster, but not too fast, right? Like too fast, you can break too much stuff, but just fast enough. Break a few things, but not too many.
There you go.
And you're right. We do hire good eggs. So
Yep,
if anybody wants to work at Ubiquitous Energy, make sure good egg is somewhere on your resume.
Absolutely. There's no doubt. Well, again, I'm thrilled that you took the time today. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days, maybe BEC next year in Nashville. It'll be a good time. You'll get to experience what your folks experienced this year. But Susan Stone, CEO, Ubiquitous Energy, thank you so much.
Thanks, Max. It was such a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Start with Trent Thiry. He is the VP of Sales and Marketing at Isoclima Global Security Glazing. Also a part of that DeLubac family. We'll get to that in a second. But it's a great thrill because I've gotten to know Trent a little bit and a really good man. So I'm happy to introduce him to the wider audience. Trent, thank you for joining the podcast.
No, pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invite. I've been listening to your podcast for quite some time. The first time we met, I don't know if you remember, but I just said, hey, it's the voice, the voice, because I usually listen to the audio podcasts. So, and you've got a great set of pipes, Max.
Thank you. That was an honor. It was really cool that you had said that. And I'm thrilled to have you on here because you're an interesting guy with in a hot segment, and you're coming off a great BEC where you kick things off on the panel. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But you can find Trent and his company at Isoclima. That's ISOCLIMASG, isoclimasg.com. So you can find them online there. And so let's start with you. First off, because you are quote unquote new to this side of the industry, but you're not new to glass. So you know our world. So let's talk about your past and where you came from and how you got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm came from the glass side of things, but I was with Vitro previous to joining Isoclima, and but I was on their automotive side. So while I was dealing with glass, it was a different type of glass. It was thinner. We were using the same types of products, right? So you're using glass, PVB, frit. But our thin glass was going down to 3.5 mils, 2.8 mils, something like that. And now on this side of the
you're
the
opposite,
industry,
yeah,
exactly. Our thin glass is 3/8 of an inch, right? I mean, so and that's where we get down to. So learning a whole new side of the industry. I was obviously coming from automotive, and I'm currently located still in our home in Southeast Michigan. Midwest, born and raised. And right in the heart of the automotive market. So I've spent about 20 years following the ups and downs of the automotive industry, and working with just about everybody under the sun from an automaker standpoint. Came into that from mechanical engineering side of things, so I have a little bit of the technical background, but I was working at the time on when I first started on some safety products. So spinning forward to Isoclima and Global Security Glazing, it's a real natural fit because we are working on safety and security,
right,
but then also within that glass product portfolio.
Very nice. And so so you understood glass and you came over to this side, and I've been impressed at how quickly you've picked it up. And we'll talk a second about your company, but how are you doing from basically the couple times I've talked to you along the way was drinking from the fire hose? How's that all going?
Sure. For sure. I'm still, the hydrant's still going. That's amazing. There's a never ending supply of water that comes out of there. So no, picking it up as best I can. And in events like Glass Build and BEC are such a great resource and time to learn about all the different aspects of the industry, whether it's from the installing side or the materials side, or even some of the, like the tapes and applications, and also the new products that are coming down the line. So those have been great resources to help as much of that water retention as I can get.
I love it. And that's what I had noticed when I met you in person at Glass Build, was that you were active in trying to learn while you were there. And that's what that show is for. It's amazing that people sometimes go there and they don't realize what's in front of them, but you did. And that makes sense. So now let's talk a little bit about your companies. And so the biggest question is what is it? So as I sent you the outline, you probably had to laugh because for some people, they only know it as Isoclima because that is a major brand, worldwide brand, powerful brand. And then you have the Global Security, which is a very well-known brand here in North America. And then you also have the old DeLubac, which is a part of the company, which is, being, kind of, phased out. What are you right now? How does that all work? And if somebody has a spec that says one of the three, does it all work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. They can call us any of those. That's fine. No, it's a great question, and the other question I always get, is it Isoclima? Is it
Yes.
Isoclima? So yeah, we go by in the U.S. is Isoclima specialty glass, and it does bring together two longtime players in the glass industry, which was the Lubeck Specialty Glass out of Blairsville, Pennsylvania, and then also Global Security Glazing out of Selma, Alabama. So underneath, we go by all of those. We show up in specifications under all of those, and so yeah, we hear it quite a bit. And again, you can say Isoclima. That's okay.
Yeah, as long as the purchase orders, I assume, and the
That's
quotes
right.
say it, it doesn't really matter what you call it, and that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so we've got that down pat. What's been interesting is right now, I think you are in a really hot segment, and it's unfortunate that you're in a hot segment. I mean, obviously, we don't like the fact that protective glass and protective glazing is hot, but you are in it. So first off, a little bit about just getting into the protective and all the offerings. And then I think the next step is having things like bent glass, which are really are I don't want to say making a comeback, because they really never went away, but now they're becoming, it's almost like a resurgence on the bent glass
Mhm.
side.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, on the protective side, you're absolutely right. It's a growing need, and unfortunately, we see that need come to the forefront. Probably every few months. Um, but because of that, there's really been a response in the market, and we do have some entry level forced entry resistant products that we offer, and so that would be it's really good for the education setting, for the K-12 market. It's also good for the commercial setting because you can retrofit a standard opening with these glasses, because they do go down to 3/8 of an inch, right? But still offer up to 6 minutes and 10 minutes of protection time, even up to 16 minutes of protection time, where uh, you're going to keep the bad actors out of the facility, whether
Right.
they're looking to gain entry for some nefarious purpose, or just to smash and grab and take something. Um, so those are kind of the entry level, but then of course, our product line from a protection standpoint spans the entire segment. So from all the way up to like a BR8 level from a bullet resistance standpoint, where these are the types of products that we would see used in the bank facility, an embassy, some of these types of settings where you're really looking for a high level of bullet resistance and also blast resistance.
Sure.
So we really span the entire segment there.
And it's become pretty commonplace now. I mean, obviously, schools, as you mentioned, and you were one of the first to have a specific school product, and then one of the first to have a specific, kind of retail slash commercial product, for stadiums and other things like that. So it is amazing. It's sad, as I said, but it's now a necessary evil, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we are also seeing them in combination, where when you have let's say the first floor of a building or even higher than that, but on your secure vestibules, where you want to see some type of a combination of the products, where you'll have some forced entry on the outside, and maybe you've got a teller window or something along those lines on the storefront, where you want to have maybe a higher level because you have some people on the other side, or kind of buzzing people in or out of the facility. So we're seeing a combination. But yeah, definitely it gets into some areas that we want to make sure that we're protecting the people that are working and serving us every day, whether it is, as you mentioned, on the arena setting, where we've done some work in that area as well, but also in the schools, in our places of residence, and the places where we work every single day, making sure those people are well protected.
And I mentioned bent, and it's funny because I mentioned the kind of the resurgence, because it seems to me in my career, bent would be hot and everywhere, and then it disappears, and then it comes back, and I think it's on one of those upswings right now. Am I seeing that right, or is it just the normal everyday sort of push on that sort of product?
No, definitely. We're seeing more bent, a lot more usage there. We're seeing a lot of, circular staircases, handrails, glass handrails, but then also on the exterior of buildings, for sure. That's coming back. And what we're really seeing is the architects and the designers are really pushing the envelope to see what it is glass can do, and having some really wild designs, and really pushing the envelope everywhere they can from an aesthetic standpoint. But then also, again, we're seeing that even on the security side, where we're they're speccing that out with, some complex inner layers, or they're trying to do something more on the protection side to make sure that it's going to withstand, let's say, hurricane force winds, and all those types of items, to make sure that it's having both the aesthetic properties to it, but then also the protection level that you want.
Nice. I'm with Trent Thiry, VP of Sales and Marketing at Isoclima, also Global Security Glazing. You may know either of those names. Find them online at Isoclima SG. That's ISOCLIMASG.com. And see what they have. And so I always mix things up with a fun question, and I'm curious with you on this one. Favorite all-time food? And the reason I ask is every year I think I'll ask it maybe once or twice a year. And the last person I asked this to was Will Pounds of TSI Corporations. And he stunned me with a certain gas station sushi. I don't think you can ever top that. That's his all-time favorite food, but who knows? Maybe you do. All-time favorite food for Trent Thiry?
Well, there's a lot of ways I can go after this. But one thing I've tried just about everywhere. If they've got barbecue chicken pizza on the menu, I'm probably going to try it.
Nice.
Coming from Metro Detroit, we've got a lot of Detroit style pizzerias, and they've all got one type of that or another. So if it's on the menu, usually I'm going to try it. But I will say, it's not gas station sushi, but one of the best meals I ever had was a train station sushi restaurant in Tokyo, when I was traveling through there, and just a hole in the wall type of a place. But I think I heard a rumor it actually had a Michelin star. And
Wow.
I'll tell you what, you had to eat this sitting down. It was so good, your knees would buckle.
Wow.
So it was
Okay.
really good.
I like it. And it's funny, you live about an hour from me. I have not gotten to meet you in person in Detroit, in the Detroit area. So we will have to go do some pizza, since that's like my go-to food. And barbecue chicken pizza, I'm right with you. I love that. Fantastic mix. Fantastic. So we will do that. Good answer. Good answer. I like that. All right. So back to the quote unquote serious stuff. BEC. It was your first BEC. First and foremost, what did you think of the conference?
I thought it was awesome. It was a really great event, and we were really honored to participate, and get up there and really talk about both safety and security, and also specialty glass. So that was a great opportunity, and it was nice to be able to contrast it with Glass Build. Both of them were in Las Vegas. Of course, Glass Build back in October, and BEC just back in March. Really great events, both of them, but really different. I enjoyed BEC. You really got to see a lot of people in the industry and get to know them, right?
Yeah.
Because you're talking about an audience size of about 700 people. Whereas Glass Build, I think we spent 3 days there, and I could have spent another 3 days there, not seen everything, and gotten to interact with most of the people. So really great event at BEC, and they kept it fun, and I really enjoyed all the keynote speakers and all the panels that we got to participate in.
It was great having you there. I thought you did a great job on your keynote panel, and it really flowed well. And you're right, there is a difference between the two events. I mean, Glass Build is massive, and it covers so many different aspects of our world. And it's important because, again, you have to hit all of that up. And then this one's important because this is where you can make some deeper, more meaningful connections. And I look at it as one sets up the other, sort of thing. And, you're either making connections at Glass Build and further them at BEC, or vice versa. And that's why it's really important to be involved. And I'm glad you are. The focus that at BEC, and one of the things that you talked about for those that did not attend, was you were on a panel talking about the future. And what was interesting was I had heard some feedback from people like, okay, I understand why Sophie from Enclose is on this panel, because she's this brilliant scientific, innovator, carbon, you name it. She's like out there. She's fantastic, unbelievable. And I know why, initially Susan Stone was on the panel, but then replaced by Kelly Whittingham when there were some travel issues. I know why they're on the panel, because they're transparent solar, and that's new, and that's happening. Why is the security glass guy up there? Or is it for the bent? Why is he or the decorative glass? Why is he up there? And I thought you accounted for yourself extremely well, especially from the standpoint of, guess what, folks? This is still a product for the future, even though it's coming from the past. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about, your mindset going into this thing, because that was not easy for you, I'm sure. When it was pitched to you, hey, we want you on this panel with these two, very high-powered women, two very high-powered, fresh innovations, and then you have you. So your thoughts.
Yeah, no, and it was doubly difficult because you know, the IQ level of both of those ladies, and everybody on the stage was super high.
Tremendous.
So I
Yeah,
really had to up my game
Katie
quite a
Devlin
bit.
is brilliant. Yeah, she was the moderator and she's fantastic. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, no, you're right. And when we think about the future of things, what we have to keep in mind, and really the message that I wanted to drive was that things are changing all the time. And with the amount of time that it takes to, you know, go from drawing, really from concept to a building being, you know, put into service, whatever it is, whether it's residential, commercial, educational, whatever it is, you're talking years, you know. So if we're not thinking right now 5, 7 years into the future, by the time that building opens, if you need to make or respond to anything, you're going to be another 5 or 7 years behind. So you could be looking 10 to 14 years in the future of what do we need to have. So we really have to start thinking about these things. And one of the things that we're receiving a lot of feedback from and participating in is what are the needs going to be 5, 7, 10 years into the future, and putting those in right now. And there are things like radio frequency transmission through the glass, optic transmission through the glass. So starting to incorporate a lot of the, you know, smart glass technologies like PDLC and some of the things that can obscure the images through there, or even introducing some of the coatings that you can put on that are going to block a lot of these things and keep them out. But then we're also seeing, especially on, I'd say, on the higher protection side of things, is that the level that we're trying to protect. Whereas previously you're really thinking about the first story of a building, maybe the
Right.
second story of a building, and then from there you're putting in maybe a standard type of a glazing. Whereas now we're seeing that we may need to start raising up those protection levels to even higher levels. And so we want to think about it. What are the types of materials that we're going to use there? How are we going to be installing them there when you're taking up, you know, these massive, large panels that are very thick, have a lot of glass, a lot of complex materials in them, and bring them up? We've got to be ready as an industry, not only to make them, to design them, make them, but then also to install them. And we've got to keep safety in mind through every aspect of that. When it comes to material selections of what we're putting in there, where are we sourcing them from? Where are we getting them from? Are we making the right selections to protect our people in our factories? And then also on the job site, and then also when they're occupied and interacting in the environment around them. We really need to think about safety and security across all those dimensions.
Nice, nice. That's important. And so it's funny, it may be in a quote unquote old school product, but it's there's continuing new school adventures that it has to meet.
Absolutely. Yeah, the technologies are changing across the board. And you know, we look forward to you know, in the future seeing some of these products integrated with some of the technologies that Sophie and Kelly were both talking about on the stage there. Because we're going to need to have it's not a either or, it's an and
Yes.
solution that we're going to need.
And I like that attitude. I think that's the right attitude because I do think that companies get set in their ways and they tend to ignore some of those new technologies instead of embracing them. And it's smart that you and the team there are embracing it and looking forward to it. It's a good call by you. I'm with Trent Thiry, VP of Sales and Marketing, Isoclima, Global Security Glazing, isoclimasg.com. You can find them online there. I know you're a busy man, and we talked about drinking from the fire hose, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do have to ask, as I ask pretty much every month and every guest, how's the year been so far, and what are you looking forward to in the very interesting 2024 date? And I'm sure you probably have some new feelings after spending some time with your industry compadres at BEC.
Yeah, definitely. Well, 2023 has been off to a really rocking start. You know, we've really knocked it out of the park. So we started really fast and we've kept it going. So it's been great there. We really started the year and ended 2022 with a pretty hairy backlog that we managed to work our way through. So we're really humming right now. Now, going forward into 2024, we're starting to see a little bit of softening. And that's been a little bit of the prediction across the board from, you know, some of the folks that we follow, like ITR Economics, and also picking up from those at BEC. Because we work and we really specialize on more, you know, commercial projects, public buildings, some larger government entities. You know, we do see that those projects are maybe being pushed out a little bit, but mostly they're moving forward. It's not quite as discretionary as some of the residential types of constructions where we know that those have started to slow down a little bit. So
Yeah.
we're optimistic, but certainly there's a little bit of softening on the horizon.
Yeah, that's the fear. But I think that again, what's nice, I guess the one thing you could say what's nice about you guys is you're pretty darn diverse. I mean, so you do
Mhm.
have that might be the nice thing of having all the different offerings. You talked about, the schools and the commercial and the ballistic, all the heavy duty ballistics and the bomb blast, and then you go over to the specialty side with the bent and some of the decorative. So you do have enough maybe that it can kind of, when one thing's down, another thing will carry it, sort of thing. So that's got, at least that's a little bit of peace of mind.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I will have to thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast. And again, when one of these times when the weather ever gets better in Michigan, we'll have to connect so we can get some pizza together. But Trent Thiry, VP of Sales and Marketing at Isoclima, thank you so much for joining me on the pod. And congrats on a great BEC and a great keynote, first of probably many for you on this side of the industry. And I hope you're finding this side of the industry good. You once you get in this side of the industry, you never go back.
I've heard 5 years and then it's a lifetime, right?
I love it. Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Max. I appreciate it.
Okay. To wrap things up this month, I'm thrilled that I have somebody that I've just gotten to know just a tiny bit over the last year. Brandon Nicastro, CEO and founder of GCS Glass. You can find them at gcs.glass online. Brandon, CEO and founder, as I mentioned, great company, great guy that I've been really, really impressed with. So thank you so much, Brandon, for doing the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
No, it's great to have you, and I've been impressed. I've followed you on social media. We're going to talk about some of the things there. You've been in your company's been in business for 10 years. But let's go back a little bit. How did you get into this business, this crazy business of ours, and the glass and shower door and glazing world?
So when I was 18 years old, my best friend was living in San Diego, and his stepdad has been a glazer forever. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, if you want to move out here, I'll get you and Matt both a job where I'm working down in San Diego. You can live with us, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "I'll get you started." This was back in 2013, so 20 years ago. "I'll get you $14 an hour starting doing commercial." And I'm like, sounds good to me. I was making, minimum wage at a bike shop. So
Right.
I moved out there, interviewed with the owner, and he started us both off at minimum wage, doing commercial glazing. And so I was already out there, and I just stayed with it. I was like, you know what, I'm already out here. It's a trade. I'll stick with it. I had nothing else going on at the time, and kind of stuck with it. But that's where it started, was in San Diego, 2003.
And really, so you don't have a family connection to this business. That was just it. That's how you got pulled into it.
Yeah, I just got drug into this thing.
And now, so you go from there, and it's funny. My only comparison, I was working in TV. I was making $6 an hour, and my brother was like, "Dude, our family's been in the business forever. Come on, I'll pay you $6.50." And
Right.
so he kicked me up 50 cents. And it was worth it for me to jump. So, but I know how you feel there. So okay, so you get into the business. Do you immediately fall in love with this? Because I mean, you have to love this business to be in it the way we are. Did you immediately fall in love with it, or was it something just clicked along the way?
No, I loved it when I got into it. We were doing, like I said, we were doing commercial storefront at the time. So it was different. I loved working with my hands. I was good with working up with my hands. So being able to erect stuff like that, I always say it's like Legos. You're building something from scratch and all that. And I was a grunt, so I was doing a lot of work, running up and down stairs, roping windows up and all that stuff. But it was good. At the end of the day, you felt like you put in a solid day's worth of work. And I guess I've always been like that. I want to feel like that I've done enough to make me feel good at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Now, how did GCS come to be? How did that come along?
So I was living in San Diego. I lived in San Diego on and off. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So I lived in San Diego on and off for about 7 years. I was married, had 2 kids out there. I got a divorce, couldn't afford to stay in San Diego, so I moved back home to Phoenix, and I ended up going to work for a big Fortune 500 company called Masco. They own
Okay.
like
Mhm.
Bear Paints,
Yep.
Milgard, all that
No,
stuff. So
no more.
they owned a company called Gale Insulation at the time, and
Yep.
they did like spray foam for track homes and all that. So I came on to do their backpacks, and then I would say I was probably there about a year or so, and it just wasn't working out. The manager of that division quit, and they were going to shut it down. I stepped up, put it on my back, and kind of was doing everything. And they wouldn't promote me. They wouldn't do anything. There was no growth for me. So my buddy, who I originally started in the glass industry with, we kind of went separate ways at this time. We weren't really talking too much. He kind of went a different direction than me. And he's like, "Hey, if I sell some showers on Craigslist, do you think you can get glass and install?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can get glass." And so he sold a couple, I installed a couple, and I was like, "You know what? I think I'm just going to go out on my own." And it was one of those things where I was like, if I can do this on the side after work, what can I, if I dedicated my time during the day, like how far could it get? And it was December 13th of 2013 when I actually walked away and was like, I'm done, and kind of just went for it.
Love it. Love it. Love, I mean, I love when people bet on themselves. It's a tough thing. It's scary as hell, but it's great because you got to do it. So your first of locations obviously was in Phoenix then?
Yep. Yes, it was.
And then it kind of just obviously because you have and we're going to talk about it, your work ethic is off the charts. You then just kind of put this thing on your back and off you went.
Yeah. So I met a guy who was buying glass from one of my vendors out here, and he was just subbing it out to install it. So he purchased the glass, and he was doing a ton of remodels. So I linked up with him, and I was like, this is my jumping point right here. Like, this is consistent work. I wasn't making a ton of money off the installs, but it was consistent enough. And so from then on, I just did that. And every job site that I passed, I took pictures of contractors. I walked in job sites. I would install and measure all day long, and then I would go home and I would start cold calling contractors at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and try to bid jobs for them. And it took off. I built a really good relationship with certain contractors, and that was kind of the foundation of GCS, was just built off the back of contractors and kind of home advisor at the time. I would advertise a little bit on Craigslist in the beginning, but once everything was official, Craigslist was kind of dying out.
Sure.
So it was just basically home advisor and then off the back of contractors.
Love it. Love it. So I'm with Brandon Nicastro, CEO and founder of GCS Glass. See them online, gcs.glass. And so you get it going, you're rolling, and that now, you have multiple locations. You have some of the best branding I've ever seen. And I definitely have a question on that. But let's first start with what overall makes GCS stand out, because I mean, there's tons of competition in this space. You actually are great with best practices with other people in the space. But what makes you and your company stand out?
We do the tough work. We do the stuff that people don't want to do. We think outside the box, and we make it happen if it's safe and can happen. And our customer service, the customer experience, we're continuously improving that. And I feel like that's one of the best things that you can have, is that customer experience. A lot of people can install a shower door, but when you go out there and you give them the best customer experience, they're going to come back over and over again. And with that customer experience, you're building great culture in the company. So if your guys believe in your company and they buy into the company, that customer experience goes a long way.
No doubt. No doubt. Now, your branding, as I mentioned just a second ago, is spectacular. You've got the great colors. You've done neat things with the trucks. Where did this come from? Because again, it's not like you had a classic training on the branding side. Is this just from being kind of connected with the customers, connected to the world? How did you pull up some of the branding aspects that really, really work nicely now?
I think it's because I hold myself to a high standard on how I look and how I dress. And I kind of rolled that in with the company because GCS is a direct reflection of myself. So I saw from all the other companies I worked for, they didn't really do a good job on branding. They would just put a name on their truck. Some people wouldn't even put a name on their truck.
Right.
There was really no branding. That they would buy you hats and shirts, but they buy the cheapest stuff, right? You get the old school shirts that just don't fit right, the hats
Right.
that just were like, you're not going to wear them. So I've always, whatever I wore is what I gave the employees, and I would print and I would do different colors, different hats. At one point I had custom Nike shoes made three different rounds for all the employees that were black and orange that said GCS glass on them, and did that for a while. And it was just one of those things. Our image is everything. So
Yes. And see, it's funny. My brother's a big listener to this podcast, and you and him would get along very well because when it came to the branding, he did not pinch pennies. It was always the best quality. Because you're right. If you give somebody a crappy hat, that usually ends up in the back of their pickup truck or the bottom on the floor. They don't have any pride in wearing it. You give them something nice, they wear it, and they wear it until it's done, and it gives you tons of free advertising. So kudos to you. It's a great call, but also it's expensive. So you have to, it's a tough one, especially when you're starting out and you're growing. That had to be a little bit of a tough go, but it's worth it.
It definitely was. And it's funny you say that about throwing the hat away. Is we have guys that are like, can I get an extra one because I want this as my going out hat? I want to wear this when on the
Right.
weekends and stuff. And that's part of branding, right? Your employees have bought into where they love wearing the stuff because it's nice quality and it looks good. So they want to wear it outside of work and represent the company as well. And every year we do something different with jackets or a type of a hoodie or something. And it's always different every single year. And they look forward to getting that new hoodie or jacket every single year.
Yeah, and it goes to say you just rolled out some new trucks, I believe, and so there are probably people that want to drive those trucks because they don't look like the typical glass transit trucks.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Good call by you. Good call. So a couple more questions because I know you've got tons of things going on. The locations, you've got a good handful right now, and obviously probably thoughts on growing. What is the next frontier? I know you're in Phoenix and some other locations, but what's next steps for GCS?
We have a goal of 50 locations in the next 5 years.
Nice.
And
nice.
It's a hefty goal, but it's reachable if we build out the foundation right. And we're still building out the foundation. And I'll tell you this, it's hard growing a national brand. It's different than growing a GCS in different locations in the same state, but going outside the state gets difficult, especially going, like, we're in California now and we're in New York. So we're across the country. So, and tax laws, all the different, just the different labor laws, everything is just different in every single state. So and we're like, well, we'll just follow the strictest place, but it's not always the strictest place. Like, there's just one-off things that are different in other states. So it's kind of, you have addendums to your employee handbooks and all that for all the locations. It's definitely a learning curve.
No doubt. And it's a challenge. And the toughest thing is that it's easy in some levels to run one or two branches because you got talent concentrated in those branches. Mm-hmm. Now, when you start to go out further and further, that talent now starts to spread a little bit and you have to find new talent. But again, I think you have the right culture, but you're doing it the right way. You're not rushing into it, but I like the goal. I'm excited about the goal, and you're obviously fired up about it too. Very cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun journey.
I love it. All right. So speaking of fun, we always break up these interviews with a fun question. And so my humble brag is I usually run between 25 and 30 miles a week. I like to run. I like to get out and run. You, I saw, did a 37-mile run in one day. That, my friend. So I got to ask you, okay, 37-mile run. How did it go? How long did it take? And why?
So it was a ultra marathon. It was a trail run.
Okay.
And it was from a city in Arizona, a little north of me, called Mare. And we ran to Rock Springs Cafe in Black Canyon City. So we ran through the mountains. It was a net downhill, but It was still a elevation gain of 3,500 feet elevation gain through the whole race. It took me 10 hours and 22 minutes to complete, of just nonstop going. Obviously there was like 5 or 6 aid stations, like every 7 miles.
Gotcha.
Aid station. It was tough. It was the hardest thing it was the most mental and physically thing I've ever had to do not that I had to do it, but that I did.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for it. The longest I ran before that was in January, was a half marathon.
Okay.
And then a month later, I signed up for this ultra marathon because I had a couple buddies that I was training with. I was like, just do it. Like I'm not ready. You're never going to be ready. So might as well just sign up and see what happens. And I would say I had an injury that I was nursing after that half marathon. So I probably ran 20 miles after that half marathon, which was a month before the ultra marathon.
Yeah.
So I only put in like 20 miles of road running. And so I just went out there and did it. And mile 19, we hit that aid station, which was like the halfway point.
Yeah.
And I was dead. I was the furthest I've ever ran, and I was starting to cramp up already. I made a mistake of not bringing any salt tabs.
Okay.
I probably wasn't drinking. I wasn't drinking enough water.
Right.
But I left that aid station, and it was a straight climb up right after the aid station. And about I went with two buddies, and one buddy took off before us, and then the other buddy and I were going to run it together, the rest of it. And then he's like, I'm going to just empty the gas tank and see what happens. So he took off, and at mile 25, I rolled my ankle.
Ooh.
And I kept going, but it got to a point where the last, I would say 15 miles, my calves were cramping up. So every time I would run, I would feel them start to ball up and tighten, about to cramp, and I'd have to let off a little bit. So I was kind of doing this weird shuffle thing, trying to run for 15 miles. And I ended up doing it, and it was a great accomplishment. And I'll do it again. I'll bring salt tabs this time and drink a lot more water. I drank probably 1.5 gallons of water that whole race, which I thought was a lot because I was filling up my pack every aid station.
Yeah.
But my watch said I had an estimated sweat loss of like 6,500 milliliters, which was almost 2.5 gallons. So
Wow.
It was probably a combination of not enough water and not enough salt.
Amazing. Hey, I give you credit. You put yourself out there, and it's a tough one. And congrats on getting it done. It is very, very impressive.
Funny thing is I text my trainer that night. It was on a Sunday, and I said, I'm actually feeling pretty good. Are we training in the morning? And he's like, it's up to you if you want to train. And I'm like, I'm good to go. I think I'm good. And my feet hurt, but I think I'm good. And I woke up at like midnight to go to the bathroom, and
Yeah.
it hurt to walk. And I was like, I had a text. I'm like, I'm not coming in the morning. There's no way.
Yeah, no, that had to be tough. Well, congrats. That's impressive. I'm with Brandon Nicastro, CEO and founder of GCS Glass. GCS.glass is their website. A few more questions. You're a part of what I consider one of the best groups online, the Shower Door Professional Groups, with Chris Phillips, who started it. Great man, part of your world now too, as well. How valuable is that group? How valuable did you find that group? I think it's unbelievable the way you guys and gals get on there and just chop it up. And it's just such a winning sort of atmosphere and so good for our world. What do you think about the whole thing?
As far as that, I'm going to dig in a little bit about social media, because I think social media is good and bad, right? There's good to it and bad to it. But with social media, it's brought people together that you would never meet in your life. And we're connected now through social media all over the world. And
Right.
You would have never known this person existed. And now with the Shower Door group, you're connected even more. You connect even more because it's on a more personal level, especially with these calls on Zoom calls and the weekly call we do.
Yep.
So you get to build relationships where it's almost like that person when you meet them in person. Finally, it's like you've known them for years because you've talked to them every week on social media and kind of built that relationship and that rapport. And for us, there's just so much knowledge in that group to be able to take in and give out.
Yeah.
There's things that I learned from people in there. I help a lot of people in that group.
Yep.
And it's also a gateway to help us grow to 50 locations. We're able to meet people that might want to get out of the business, might want to, merge with GCS one day or something. So we're able to kind of utilize that to be able to meet great people.
No, smart. And Chris has done a wonderful job, and that's on Facebook, the Shower Door Professionals. And I've put it on my blog a few times. if you're in this business, you really should be at least following that page, be a member of that page. But those weekly Zoom calls, I've been on a few. They're fantastic. So a couple last questions for you, good and bad. I mean, you mentioned some good things along the way. What are we as an industry are we doing that's good, and what do we have to do to get better? And I'm curious about your perspective, because you're, again, not somebody who had a family in the business. You're somebody who worked your way up literally from the bottom, from minimum wage as a grunt. So what are the good things and what are the bad things that we got to work on?
I think the good things is we do a really good job of showcasing the trade. We install glass in the biggest and baddest buildings in the world, and it's on display. Like, our work is shown, and it's one of the most sensitive materials that we're installing too. And the same thing on the residential side with shower doors and windows and stuff, where we get to install in some of the nicest houses in the world as well, and showcase our stuff as a center. Like, some shower doors are a centerpiece to a house or a wine cellar or a stuff like that. So I think we do that really well. On the other hand, I think that we need to get better at training. There isn't really a training. There's no school, really. There's no definitive, when someone wants to train, this is what you do. Right. Everyone has their own way to do things. There's not really set standards on how to do things. Everyone kind of just learns as they're coming up on how to do things. So us as leaders in the industry got to try to put it together to be able to have a better training program. And I know there's guys out there that have really good personal, like, training in their own businesses, as we do. Right. But there definitely there's definitely room for it to be on a national scale. And I'm not in training, not just in installing, but training on how to price, how to just back end stuff, because that kind of stuff kills our industry, especially in the shower door industry, when you have guys that don't know how to price, and it brings everything else down, and you're competing against that stuff. But, like, if everyone kind of learned that, would help the whole industry out. We'd be able to pay our employees more than what we're paying them, because we want to showcase our stuff. We want our employees to be able to thrive as well. So,
yeah, that's definitely a lift all boats sort of scenario. Is improving the training, and especially, you're right. I mean, I think right now a lot of the focus is on that labor side, like how to install, if there are training sort of programs, and there are the ones that I, follow as well, but very little with regards to estimating, with project managing. And I think you're right. I mean, that's what kills us. And that's some of the things that I'll read on the Shower Door Professionals board, when somebody says, I just lost a job to X because they did this. And everybody will jump on and say, good for you. Let that person take that crappy job at that sort of situation, because they're going to drown on it. They're going to choke on it, sort of thing. But we got to get out of that. We got to have less people doing stupid things like that. And I think that makes a lot of sense by you.
And I think that's where the group helps too, there's a lot of people in that group, and we talk about best practices and how to do things and stuff, but it's not everyone's on social media. Not everyone's in the group. Not everyone's going to listen to how to do it. They're going to think their way is better, and it might be better, but this, as a whole, we can have a better industry if we didn't hold everything so tight to our chest and not give out any information. There's plenty of work in this world for everybody to not worry about trade secrets and stuff like that. We can help out a lot.
Absolutely. And so that brings me to my last question, and it's that plenty of work thing. And so everybody that listens or watches this podcast loves this question about how's it going right now, business wise, for you now, and what's 2024 looking like? Because I guess now for you, being a guest right after the craziness with these banks and so on, 2024 might be a little bit more murky than we thought. But how's 2023 going for you and GCS, and what are you guys looking at for 2024?
So far it's been a great start. We had a record February here in Phoenix, little slower in January, but I think we're in a year of maintaining. I think that's what it is. I don't think you're going to see crazy growth this year. You might grow a little bit, but I think we're going to see more of, like, we're going to be maintaining on what we were doing the last couple years. And then same with 2024, depending on what happens in politics and stuff. It always plays a part in everything, but depending on what happens. But I think we're in a tough time, and it doesn't look like it to most, but there's some industries that are struggling. You see banks that are over leveraged with crypto and stuff like that are going under. And, I had a talk with the vice president of the bank I'm with, and they assured us that they're not going under. They're good. They're not over leveraged. They don't even get into a lot of the, private equity stuff or the
venture capital. Yeah.
Venture capital, tech startup stuff and all that in crypto. So I think that scared a lot of people, seeing banks that happen to banks, especially with the economy looks like it's doing well, at least in construction, it's doing well. Yeah. But for us, it's a little bit different because we're in different markets. So we see different trends. It's not the same through the whole company. One location could struggle a little bit, one can thrive. So it's kind of up and down. But I think we're in like a winter area that happens every century, the Great Depression, World War II and all that. Then you go into spring and summer and it's thriving. So, I mean, if you can maintain your business or even start a business in this time, you'll be fine and you'll thrive in the spring and summer. Some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies like Apple, Disney, all those started in a down economy. So.
Sure. And I think, you're diverse enough, not only in location, but in product offering that you can weather, you can maintain, like you're saying. And I think that's one of the big things I preach is diversity. And I think that you do that to a T.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's good because when you're busy, you don't have to be as diverse, right? But you got to be able to transition to that if you need to, and kind of grow that way. And it's
awesome.
That's part of our core values is adaptability. So got to be able to adapt to the times.
Well, you've been adapting since day one. It's an impressive story, my friend, from how you got this thing started to what you're doing now and how awesome it is. I really appreciate you coming on. I've got Brandon Nicastro, CEO and founder of GCS Glass. See his company online. gcs.glass is the website. My friend, thank you so much for doing the podcast. I look forward to seeing you at the next show or event somewhere.
Awesome. I appreciate being on. Thanks.
All right, so there we go. Another podcast in the books. And again, thank you to myglassclass.com for the sponsorship. Check them out at myglassclass.com for all the training needs that you may have from the National Glass Association. The best of the best on glass and glazing information and training at myglassclass.com. And as I always end the podcast with some TV items, a couple returning shows, and it's very exciting. And one thing I don't understand is why are so many good shows returning right now when the weather is finally getting better in most of the country and you want to be outside? The timing's off. These things should have come out when we're all stuck inside. But anyway, Succession isn't coming back any day now. Ted Lasso is back. So both are exciting. Yellow Jackets is back. On the new side, there's a new show from Kiefer Sutherland, who I loved in 24. Also loved him in the TV show, which I can't remember now, where he was the president of the United States when the cabinet got blown out. Man, I can't remember what that is. Designated Survivor. That's what it is. He's got a new show coming out called Rabbit Hole on Paramount Plus. And from everything I've read and seen, that looks really good. So Rabbit Hole on Paramount Plus, that's coming out at the end of March. And also a documentary on Reggie Jackson, the great Yankee, coming out on Amazon Prime. Looking forward to that. So some good things there on the TV side, especially for those of you who like some of the empty your calorie sort of things. Helps pass the time and some good stuff along the way. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you to my guests, Susan, Trent, Brandon, fantastic people, great folks for this industry. Working on next month, got a few nice people lined up. Hopefully that all comes true. I plan on making that happen, and we will see you then. But thank you so much for supporting, and we'll see you again.
Oh, the music is stopped.